We begin tonight with what else? Election night across the country. Polls have now officially closed in all 4 states holding primary elections today: Colorado, Minnesota, Georgia, and Connecticut. Tonight really is the biggest primary night between now and the elections in November. The results of these elections tonight will go a long way toward determining whether Democrats or Republicans will control the Senate, the House, as well as governor's mansions in the years to come. At this hour, there is one result we can bring you. In the great state of Connecticut, Republican Linda McMahon, the former World Wrestling Entertainment executive, currently leads her 2 opponents in the race for the Republican Party's nomination for the United States Senate. With 11% of precincts now reporting, Linda McMahon has 47% of the vote. Her nearest challenger, Rob Simmons, right now, again, with 11.5% of precincts reporting. Rob Simmons is at 29.8%, Peter Schiff at 23.1%. The winner of that race will face that state's Democratic Attorney General, Richard Blumenthal, to fill Chris Dodd's vacant U.S. Senate seat in November. Polls are also now closed in the great state of Georgia, where the race for governor there has attracted some big-name Republicans and some very unexpected Republican sloganeering.
So, Georgia, are you ready to bring it on? Are you ready to elect Karen Handel as your new governor of Georgia?
To be clear, that was not a liberal satire of a Republican political event in 2010. That was not Bush-bashing liberal video editors putting words in conservatives' mouths. That really happened.
So, Georgia, are you ready to bring it on?
Bring it on. Bring it on. That was Sarah Palin stumping for a woman named Karen Handel, who's in a Republican primary runoff tonight in Georgia. Karen Handel, I'm not kidding, is actually using "Bring It On" as her campaign slogan. Apparently, mission accomplished and "Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job" were both taken. This is a primary that's interesting in its own right, reused George W. Bush slogans and all. But it's also turned into a very interesting political proxy war among Republicans. Karen Bring It On Handel is running against former Republican Congressman Nathan Deal. And while Ms. Handel has Sarah Palin by her side, Nathan Deal has his own Republican Party heavy hitter backing him.
This man I stand beside is the real deal. I cannot help but believe that the same Georgia that was smart enough to give me their confidence wouldn't be smart enough to make sure that their next governor is named Nathan Deal.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Huckabee is back. But this race is about more than just Mike Huckabee versus Sarah Palin. In addition to Mike Huckabee, Nathan Deal has also scored the endorsement of one Newt Gingrich. Karen Handel has also scored the endorsement of former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. So it's Huckabee and Gingrich for Nathan Deal versus Palin and Romney, plus George Bush's old Iraq slogan for Karen Handel. Now, to be clear, this is not a Senate race or a House race. This is a race to be the Republican candidate for governor in Georgia. And you have all of these Republican Party presidential wannabes, Republican Party heavyweights, trying to step in and essentially become kingmakers in this race. Polls closed in Georgia a few hours ago. At this hour, we can report that Nathan Deal holds a slim lead over Karen Handel. Deal right now with 51% of the vote and Handel with 49%. Again, it is early. The winner of this race will face Democrat Roy Barnes in November. There's another political proxy war going on tonight in the state of Colorado, this one happening on the Democratic side, specifically the Democratic race for the U.S. Senate seat in Colorado. There is an incumbent there, incumbent Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, who's been endorsed by President Obama. Mr. Bennett's Democratic challenger, however, Andrew Romanoff, has been endorsed by former President Bill Clinton. Both President Obama and President Clinton cutting robocalls in this race for their chosen candidates.
Hi, this is President Barack Obama, and I need your help. I'm asking you to vote to keep Michael Bennet in the United States Senate. I need Michael Bennet in the Senate so that together he and I can continue to fight for the future we want and the change we need.
Hi, this is Bill Clinton. I'm supporting Andrew Romanoff for the U.S. Senate, and I hope you'll vote for him in Tuesday's Democratic primary. Make sure you get there before 7 p.m. on Tuesday. And please, mark the top line, Andrew Romanoff for U.S. Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. It is not often that two presidents of the same party campaign, even in very boring robocalls, against each other's candidates. Earlier this year, President Obama traveled to Colorado to headline a fundraiser for Michael Bennet. Mr. Bennett's opponent has countered with TV ads like this.
President Bill Clinton calls Andrew Romanoff one of the best legislative leaders in America and the Democrats' best hope to hold this seat.
Well, this whole president v. president thing has made that Colorado Senate race tonight, granted, a really interesting one to watch. There isn't a lot of heat on that one, but still, it's been interesting. Polls closed in Colorado at the top of the hour. Right now, we're still waiting for the first numbers to come in. We will be keeping an eye on that. That's what's happening tonight in the Colorado Democratic side. But I have to tell you, if you've been following anything leading up to the midterms at all, you already know that the most interesting thing in all of the primaries happening tonight, the most interesting thing going on tonight in the whole country in terms of politics, is the children's treasury of amazing candidates that are gracing the Republican side of the slate in Colorado. I mean, demographically, in terms of the way the political winds are shifting, this sort of ought to be the year for Colorado Republicans. But it has not worked out that way. They cannot get it together. Take the Republican Senate race in Colorado. Do you remember their Senate race?
Why should we vote for you?
Why should you vote for me? Because I do not wear high heels. I have cowboy boots. They have real bull on them. That's Weld County bull, not Washington, D.C. bull. So.
That's the state of the race between two Republicans running for the U.S. Senate nomination in Colorado. That's Ken Buck in his poopy boots against Jane Norton, who he says you should not vote for because she wears high heels. That's a race for United States Senator. You guys stay classy. Then there's the Republican race for governor in Colorado, where there's a real risk that even if Republicans do turn out to vote for governor, it'll just be to vote no. Their two choices are these. Former Republican Congressman Scott McInnis, who distinguished himself last month by getting caught up in a plagiarism scandal, a scandal that was unearthed by the Denver Post, which later called for him to withdraw from the race. It's either him or it's Republican businessman Dan Mays, the man who has made himself nationally famous in the last week or so because he's been pushing the conspiracy theory that because there is a bike sharing program in the city of Denver, that means that black helicopters are going to take Denver away and make it part of the United Nations. But whichever candidate wins tonight, Republicans will have another option in November. Prolific anti-immigrant crusader and spectacularly fascinating candidate, former Republican Congressman Tom Tancredo. Tom Tancredo initially demanded that those two Republicans withdraw from the governor's race. Because they didn't, he says he's going to run against whoever wins tonight as a third-party challenger, for which Democrats and the people who make cable news segments are very thankful. Colorado is mostly a mail-in ballot election, but you could vote at the polls, too, which closed at the top of the hour. The first results have not yet come in. But have I mentioned how much I love election nights? Joining us now is NBC News chief White House correspondent and political director Chuck Todd. He's also co-host of MSNBC's The Daily Rundown. Mr. Todd, thank you for your time this evening.
Rachel, I just love hearing the music. I love that you open the show with the music. You know, it just brings back good memories.
I hear that music and I actually get this sort of pseudo-drunk euphoria washing over me that makes me unreliable as a narrator of facts. So you have to help. You have to help bring the authoritativeness back here, Chuck.
Yes,
polls have closed everywhere. We don't have very many results so far. But what is going to be the most significant thing that happens tonight in terms of extrapolating toward November?
Well, I think, look, I guess you would have to say Colorado. And I say this in this respect because I think one thing we learned about Colorado, and the most fascinating part of the Romanoff-Bennett race is this. You know, Bennett had a large lead say, 3 or 4 weeks ago, to the point where the Bennett campaign made a decision not really to go negative, and they never did. Romanoff was he went negative on Bennett big time. Ad after ad after ad hitting Bennett on Wall Street ties, this and that. And it worked, and it closed the gap. And I think one thing that I feel like I'm learning there that I think does matter in the fall is that people are going to take their time to make a decision. That it's an electorate that is in flux, and don't assume just because 3 weeks out you got a double-digit lead that it's over. I think that leads to the fact that the public is a little bit anxious about the economy, a little bit anxious about a lot of things, and I think that means a candidate trailing late can close the gap because voters are waiting till the very last minute. You know, they don't like a lot of their choices right now on anything, whether it's what's going on in Washington, what's going on in their state. And that's the one thing I would say I take from Colorado that says, you know what, maybe that's a lesson for all of us in late October. Everybody is predicting everything that's going to happen now. Hold off. Wait to the last week or so in October.
With the electorate or at least opinions in flux like that, what happens when former presidents get involved? I mean, there's been so much attention paid to what the effect is of an Obama endorsement right now, but to have Bill Clinton involved in that race, it's hard to discern what the result of that has been, how the electorate is reacting to Bill Clinton as a political figure again. And then there's also the situation with the candidate who's running with Bush's Bring It On slogan in Georgia, which just blows my mind that somebody would use that as a slogan. But it does point out the fact that George W. Bush is nowhere to be seen in terms of campaigning for Republican candidates this year.
No, and I don't imagine we'll see him. We have seen Laura Bush on the trail for a couple of candidates. That said, look, I think this former president stuff, as you put it, those were pretty boring robocalls. I mean, neither one of them seemed like they put a lot of energy into it. It's as if they said, please record this call. Oh, by the way, Mr. President, is it really 10:30 at night? You know, it was very late that they seemed to do that. But I think a lot of people are going to probably overread what happens here. Look, Bill Clinton never stepped foot in the state for Andrew Romanoff. And in fact, it seems as if he had a lot of respect for the White House here, and he didn't want to create this proxy fight. And he even did this recorded phone call, it seems, reluctantly. Even President Obama, look, if Bennett loses, there is this narrative building. Some people will say it's unfair, but I think there's clearly, puts a judgment on the White House, and you sit there and say, geez, every time you guys have gotten involved in a primary, you haven't done well. You've ended up with egg on your face, whether it's Arlen Specter, whether it's what happened in Arkansas, which they were kind of for Blanche Lincoln. Then they pulled back. Oh, by the way, she won. And then here with Michael Bennett. I think Bennett ends up eking this out. Organization in a mail-in primary matters a lot. But I'll tell you, the bigger story in Colorado is this Republican debacle. As you put it, look, Republicans could win the House, could take control of the Senate, and yet somehow they're going to mess up two places where they should have a good election night in November, and that's Colorado, and we've seen a similar problem going on in Florida with the Florida Republican Party. That's a big problem for the Republican Party if they ever want to get the White House back. Colorado and Florida are such huge states in presidential elections, and so what's going on with the Republicans in Colorado is a mess. It's a debacle, and the fact that they could lose both the Senate and gubernatorial seats in this political climate is malpractice by the Republican Party in that state.
NBC News Chief White House Correspondent and Political Director Chuck Todd, co-host of MSNBC's The Daily Rundown, which you can catch every day from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on MSNBC. Chuck, thanks for your insight and your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
All right.
We will be right back.
There are some who feel like that, the conditions are such that they can attack us there. My answer is bring them on.
The Rachel Maddow Show uses Cisco telepresence for face-to-face interviews.